Hi, I'm Mokoso, and I'm your host for the #Share My Experience podcast. I knew a girl once who was an only child, but both her parents were twins. How ironic that she grew up alone, but her parents had shared their lives with siblings who they knew since they were born. I don't know why I felt so sorry for her. I can't imagine what it was like not to have a sibling to play with. It seemed like just a very sad existence to me. But she was a very sweet girl, very soft-spoken, and appeared quite mature for her age. She was quite close with her mother, and I wondered if it was because of her unique position as the only child. I have lots of siblings, and in my opinion, they are more terrorists than playmates. I often ask my parents why they chose to have so many children. The back of our family car was always too cramped for me. I hated to be squashed or forced to have one of my younger siblings sit on my lap for what appeared to be endless hours whenever we went out as a family. Don't get me wrong, I love my family and every one of my siblings. I was born second. I had an older brother and 3 younger sisters. According to the culture where I'm from, in the Igbo tribe, I am the Ada. The name is reserved for the first daughter of the family and is a revered and respected title. The Ada has the responsibility of being the second mother in the home and is essentially in charge of all her siblings, including older male siblings. When I became privy to my role and name, I liked the fact that I was the Ada. I knew some pretty cool girls who were named Ada, and so I felt pleased to be one of them, even though I didn't go by the name. Also, the fact that an Igbo man will treat his Ada like a princess was a huge bonus. I had my father wrapped around my little finger and I loved it. But as I started to grow up, resentment for the forced responsibility that came along with the position hit me quickly. Suddenly, I couldn't go out to play with the other kids because I had to stay close to my mother in the kitchen and learn how to cook. The ugly reality of household chores landed on me like a ton of bricks that I didn't see coming. Hold up. Why can't my younger siblings do all of this? Why did it have to be me? Sure, they had their little chores and responsibilities, but now I was the one who had all these things to do when my parents weren't home. No more long hours of play before they got back. That was essentially over. The transition was so weird for me, and I didn't take it too seriously at first. I often forgot to do things like bring out the ingredients to be defrosted and meal prep for my mom to cook when she got home. I've lost count of how many times I burnt the meat that was meant for the stew and soup because I was playing or watching TV. This soon earned me the reputation of being lazy and negligent, which was unacceptable for the Ada of the family. I had to shape up quickly. I quickly graduated from sous chef to the official family caterer. My mom cooked only special and complicated dishes, and I had the responsibility of warming them up, preparing simple sides, and serving the family. I didn't mind too much that I had to be on standby to serve my dad whenever he came home from work, and wait to clear the table after he was done. It was my responsibility after all. He always invited me to eat with him, or left a special piece of meat for me, bigger than the rest of my siblings, but that was our little secret. When my younger sister was born, I was almost 8 years old. I remember coming home from school one day to see my mother sitting in the big rocking chair in the living room, holding a tiny bundle dressed in a Tweety Bird onesie. I fell in love with her with all my heart instantly. I was so fascinated by this tiny, adorable human being who could produce sounds that could wake up the dead when she cried. It was fun to play with her and make her smile, feed her and burp her, and even change her diapers every now and then. But when my mother went back to work, she suddenly became my responsibility. Not because she didn't have a nanny, she did. But I was essentially her nanny's assistant, and unbeknownst to me, mother in training. There were days when I'd be sulking because I was made to carry her and calm her down while she was crying, instead of watching cartoons with my other siblings. My mom and aunt would often say, "You are here frowning. Don't you know that your mates in the village have children?" I didn't know who my mates were, but I felt sorry for them, saddled with the responsibility of taking care of children when they essentially were children themselves. I didn't think it was fair. After all, she wasn't even my baby. I began to resent the fact that my television shows were interrupted. I couldn't go out to play with my friends and the other kids when I wanted to, and when we went to our friends' parties, I was responsible for my sister and had to carry her everywhere. No more races with my mates, playing catch-up and swinging from the monkey bars at the playground. Now I had to stick to the safe rides that allowed babies, making sure that I held her on the swing and only go slowly. No more swinging to the highest point and jumping off. No, I had to make sure that she was safe and protected. It definitely took a toll on my interactions with my playmates. I couldn't join in and play in the group activities because I was holding a baby. But my friends loved her and took turns in carrying her when we were out to give me some reprieve. That always meant that someone would be missing from the games at every point. Sometimes, I wish that one of my other siblings would just take her so I could play like I used to. But they weren't the Ada. I was. Pretty soon, I was a preteen with a toddler attached to her hip. She went everywhere with me. I didn't mind so much at first, and everyone basically called me her mom. I loved her so much and my heart was intertwined with hers. My name was the first word that she spoke. By the time I became a teenager, it was burdensome to have a child running after me. I soon found that I didn't have as much time for her as I once did. There were so many other things that I was dealing with, and I just couldn't be her mom anymore. All her questions and tantrums started to irritate me, and I drove her away more than I let her come close. I felt it was time to push her on to my younger siblings, let them play and look after her. In my mind, I was now grown and didn't have time for childish things. I read a story once about a girl who grew up in a large family, and as the firstborn, she had to take care of many younger siblings. She had so much responsibility from a young age that she got tired and wanted to escape it all. So, she quickly accepted the proposal of the first suitor that approached her parents for her hand in marriage, believing that that was her way out. The poor child didn't imagine that she would go on to start her own family and essentially recreate the cycle, but this time with no possible way of escape. The story didn't end well. My major grouse with being the Ada of the family was how much my younger sisters got away with. It irked me to no end. They grew up not really knowing how to do all the basic things that I had to learn very early on, like cooking, cleaning thoroughly, and taking care of babies. It just seemed really unfair to me. And here's the afterword. Traditionally, even as an adult, the Ada is often still expected to step up, especially when her parents are older, retired, and even when they eventually pass away. She has a role that spans across being confidant, consultant, arbitrator, admin officer, logistics manager, and so much more for the family. It's a huge responsibility that often becomes exhausting, especially when dealing with entitlement from siblings who have been conditioned to believe that her primary responsibility is to take care of them, because that's all they've ever known. In some instances, it causes her to become overbearing or even a tyrant. Of course, this isn't always the case. There are so many other factors that come into play, such as family dynamics, orientation, belief systems, and so much more. If I'm being honest, a few Adas I know are bullies and rebellious, and some of them come from families rife with sibling rivalry. There are many instances where the Ada assumes her position of honor with pride and lords it over her siblings. Usually, her younger siblings, and quite typically the one born immediately after her, resents or covets her position. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way that he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it." A fantastic verse in my opinion, and one that can be examined in so many different ways. But I think it should apply to all the children in a family. As much as parents can, they should prepare all of them equally for childhood and empower them with the skills and the tools they need for their respective futures. One upside of this cultural phenomenon is that it teaches responsibility pretty early. The Ada is forced to grow up quickly, and she essentially prepares for having a family of her own. It's no surprise that there's usually pressure for her to get married when she comes of age. After all, her parents have spent their whole lives preparing her for this. But I'm reminded of a verse in the scripture that says this: "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways." It's in 1 Corinthians 13:11. There's a season for childhood and adulthood, and both should be honored. In my opinion, grooming young children to become assistant mothers too early takes away from their childhood experience. They are forced to grow up faster than their peers, and while this may have positive and negative impacts, it's debatable whether this is a healthy practice or not, especially in the world that we live today. I love you, and I'm praying for you.